Why can't Ukraine get into NATO? What is war really like? Why do people pretend Russia isn't waging a war with Ukraine? And if Russia's so strong, why is it threatened by Ukraine? How does Ukrainian culture play a role in military success? Is the Azov battalion really full of Nazis? These are questions from your comments, and I'm talking to retired Lieutenant Colonel Glen Grant from the Royal Artillery, exclusively for TikTok. Glen is an expert who has advised different countries on updating their military, including Ukraine.
You made me out to be a real superhero. Thank you.
I've interviewed Glen before on TV, but this is just for us. Okay, Glen, are you a retired colonel?
Lieutenant Colonel, please don't over-promote me.
Okay, let's talk about a little bit of your experience, because this will build on understanding what's going on in Eastern Ukraine for me as someone that doesn't have military experience. When you say artillery, what comes to my mind is shooting at stuff, right?
Yeah, big guns.
Yeah, big guns.
But it's more than big guns. Battle.
So how would you apply this knowledge to what's going on in Eastern Ukraine? Because the Minsk Treaty said a lot of that heavy weaponry there's got to be like this 30-kilometer buffer zone. And I was trying to understand the relevance of the javelins. Every time that I would talk to someone about military aid in 2018, 2019, people would be talking about the javelins. And, they finally got delivered at the beginning of 2020. However, the javelins can't be anywhere near the conflict area, can they?
At the moment, they're 750 miles behind the conflict line. They're somewhere around about Lviv. But you have to remember, javelin is it's just two things to it. It's an anti-tank weapon. So it's just an anti-tank weapon like any other anti-tank weapon. But secondly, it's a complex beast because it's got long range, and you can use it. But the key thing about javelin is that it is a good weapon. In other words, it's quality, and therefore what's important about it is that you want to use it. You actually have to train people to use it properly. They have to learn how to sight it, how to put it, so that you're not trying to hit a tank from the front where it's got the most armour and the most protection. And this means an awful lot of training. And when I say an awful lot of training, I mean like soldiers and commanders being on the ground thinking about this for 2 or 3 years. Then you've actually got to practice with simulators firing it so that you do not miss.
So actually getting the javelins isn't a short-term solution for anything.
You can't just give something like this to someone. It's like giving someone a Formula One car and saying, yeah, get out there and race Hamilton. Here you are. You can drive. Get in there and drive a Formula One car. No, you can't.
To operate a javelin, you need extensive training, and each one costs about $200,000. Does that make sense?
We're coming into a completely different conceptual world for defence, which is, do you want cheaper and lots, or do you want more expensive and accurate? And the answer is you need both. You need both because sometimes only the accuracy and the accuracy and the range will suffice. Other times, when the enemy gets in closer, you need lots of throwaway stuff that you can just fire and run away, that you can carry, that you haven't got to sight so easily. So that because tanks don't tend to come in ones when the enemy wants to attack you properly, they tend to come in 10s and 15s and 20s. And if you get a tank battalion, then you're looking at upwards of 30 towards 50 tanks.
At the end of April, early May 2021, there was a huge amassing of Russian troops along Ukraine's eastern border. And people were asking, what's going to happen? What would an offensive move by Russia look like? Would it be like it's on TV, where the infantry walks along with the tanks and they just kind of sweep in? Or is it first the infantry?
That's a movie.
Okay,
that's
how
a
did
movie. That's a movie, or it's what the worst military trained separatists do on the other side of Donbass when Russia pulls a miner out and says go and attack. It's what people do because they've seen it on television.
if this war in Ukraine would heat up, what would be the strategy you would advise the Ukrainian military to watch out for? What do you think the Russians would do?
The idea for something like Russia is to get behind you, is not to have to attack you, or to attack you in force somewhere where you are so weak that all people can do is run away. You don't want to mess around fighting someone one to one. You want to actually to identify a spot where the enemy is weak, where you haven't got to drive over your own mines, possibly, and then you hit it with everything you've got in that one spot until you break through. And then having broken through, you get behind the enemy and you drive like mad to destroy the logistics, to take the next town and to block him off, so that he's got two choices. But he's either got to fight you or he's got to give in because he's surrounded.
It was always hard for me when I was working at UATV because I would be reporting how many soldiers were lost on certain days.
First this hour, the name of the Ukrainian soldier who died yesterday on the front line in Donbas has been made public. Over the past day, Russian hybrid troops violated the ceasefire 20 times.
But it was admittedly one-sided. I mean, it was a state TV channel, but I would say, 3 soldiers were lost, here or here. But there were never reports about how many were killed on the other side. Is that because they don't know the number? They prefer not to humanize this? What's the logic behind that?
That's a good question. I'm not. That usually the frontline guys find out some way or another. I mean, there are lots of ways of finding out, and there are times when, they do kill 3 or 4 on the other side, either as a response to a death on the Ukraine side, or just because the opportunity presents itself, i.e. a stupid frontal attack coming towards you. Well, before they actually get close and kill you, you fire back and kill some of them. So so the numbers are often known. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of strangeness in the reporting. People are trying to pretend, politicians trying to pretend that there is no war, but well, of course there is. The comment from the sort of joint headquarters of his injuries were incompatible with life. Well, he was killed. I mean, he's dead. And they should say so. The man was killed, or you could actually say murdered, because if it's not a war, then it's murder. And therefore a court case should immediately be risen of who on Ukrainian soil murdered a Ukrainian soldier. And then a couple of years ago, one of the brigade commanders actually said, we no longer tell the OSCE anything, because if we tell them it, we know it's going to appear on the other side or in their reports, or it's going to appear and their reports go to the Russians. And he said, so we just don't tell them anything anymore. And I can quite understand that. But the OSCE is being, is playing. In some ways, it's playing the game that they have to play because they want access. You only have to look at the front line. What are most people being killed by? Snipers. Snipers. Well, don't tell me that the Ukrainians are doing that to themselves. Sniper means someone with a serious weapon and serious training. A headshot is really difficult, and therefore those people are serious Russian trained or Russian themselves quality soldiers. Snipers are usually your best soldiers. So this is serious war activity on the front line, killing Ukrainians, designed just to kill Ukrainians. I mean, I heard one comment which may or may not be true, that the Russian sniper courses come to Donbas and you don't pass the course until you've killed someone. Now that I would say sounds 99% true to me, by the way, because it actually known when a sniper course is coming into the front line. So they're using Donbas to train people.
What does the Ukrainian military need to invest in to keep Ukrainian soldiers safe from snipers and other dangers?
What you actually need is either something like radar-based, radar-based or a surveillance-based system that actually identifies movement out to 2 or 3 kilometres, which is the zone that the snipers have got to get into, because there's only a couple of sniper rifles in the world that will fire more than 3 kilometres, and most it's 2, 1.5. So you actually need systems that actually identify movement, and whether that's a deer or whether that's a sniper is another matter. But there are none of those on the front line, even though they are available for sale in Ukraine from Ukrainian companies. It really is time that people understood that it is a war. And of sort of hiding away from the reality of war is not healthy. It's not healthy for the country. It's not healthy for society.
Why are they doing that? Some people have explained to me that having this open hot war is bad for business.
I mean, in many ways, it is. It is bad for business, but how long do you keep going doing this? This is the question. It's like having a bad tooth. It's not quite bad enough to go to the dentist. So you suffer with slight. But how long do you suffer for? And eventually it is going to get bad. It's not going to go away. This is not going to go away.
Why do you think that really well-qualified diaspora doesn't play an active role in government here? I remember hearing Ulana Suprun talk about how she had a tough time being efficient because no one wanted her to be efficient and effective. And
yes.
I know in the Baltic states, they welcome their diaspora back. And,
yes. And they've been presidents. And no, I mean, they should be doing this. It's exactly what they should be doing, to bring back the experience and to ask people to come back and to work. I mean, you know, getting rid of Ulana was complete and utter nonsense. And it's now showing, isn't it? As a government, you have 2 priorities with this. One is to get your defence forces the strongest that you possibly can. And they have not been doing that. We've been spending money on what defence, the government-owned defence industry can produce, not actually what is required. Those 2 things are very different. And so there's a lot of money wasted. So the government is not keeping the initiative by putting the pressure on Russia in other ways other than, I mean, hybrid warfare is only going one way. It's not going back. It should be going back in spades. I mean, the legal things, half the legal things are being done by volunteers. Or the things to do with the Sea of Azov. You know, the volunteers are setting up organisations to try and deal with Russia because the government is not doing it.
What do you attribute that to, though? Is it because they've got their heads in the sand? Or is it because...
Cowardice. Blunt cowardice in one way. They don't want to face up to the reality, is number 1 view. Number 2 view, some of them are making money out of this. And therefore they don't want to disturb the status quo. The oligarchs are making money. They've all got richer from war.
This is part of the culture that affects the success of the military here. And, you know, you deal with defense and security. You've been doing this a long time. Is this one of the key challenges, this propensity towards corruption?
No, I think it's the key challenge, because, you know, the highest priority for any government is the security of the country, and there is no security of Ukraine. It's already lost the Sea of Azov. It's lost Crimea, and arguably it's lost Donbass. That is not security of a country. Having lost Azov recently, almost completely, by not even clever moves. I mean, expected moves, anticipated moves. Goodness, I've been writing about this for 6 years, and I've said what they're going to do, and I've said it to you on television, exactly what they're going to do, and they've just done what I said they were going to do, and they will keep doing it. As long as the country keeps giving in and giving up bit by bit by bit by bit. You know, and I know, I can understand completely that Zelensky does not want lots of people to die. But what he's got to understand is that they will. Well, if they don't die, they'll lose their freedom, which is worse, and they'll be Belarusia. And it's no good hiding away from it. And nobody's doing anything. They're not preparing properly. I mean, at the time in April when we were talking about, Russians being on the border, and they were, and it was serious numbers, and it's still serious numbers on the border. There's people still going on holiday. There's some of the best commanders who've been best commanders, who are, at the university, not being engaged.
Okay, but here's the problem. If Ukraine would prepare any more, wouldn't it be considered aggression?
No,
I mean,
it's considered common sense. You just tell people to go away. They're killing us every day. How is preparing to stop being killed aggression?
where does Russia's near abroad stop? If they use that as just
It doesn't.
for a
It
buffer,
doesn't. It doesn't stop. There is no near abroad for Russia. There is no near abroad. It's all, Libya, Syria, any African country you can sell tanks to. It's all, Russian ambition. Russian ambition. I mean, if they were actually worried about war, they would all be down on the Chinese border. So they're not worried. This is about defeating the enemy, which is America, NATO, and the European Union, who they see as the enemy because not military. It's nothing to do with the military. It's to do with the culture. They don't want that culture because the culture that we have, the liberalist culture, will destroy Russia internally.
and is that the key argument for focusing on Ukraine? Because Belarus has not developed in the same way Ukraine has in terms of this westward orientation. Having a neighbor that is making positive strides toward democracy, civil society.
It's the fundamental difference between government first and people first. Putin is government first. Government rules. Government is important. People are there to be ruled. In our society, it's people first, and the government is there to serve the people. Those two things are fundamentally incompatible. And you still have, in Belarusia, government rules, and people are there to serve the government. In Ukraine, it's beginning. The signs of people first are beginning bit by bit to creep into the dialogue, into the media, into government itself. It's not there yet by a long way because you've still got parts of the government like Ministry of Interior under Varkov that are still very, very much government first. People are there to serve. But these things are changing bit by bit, and Putin does not want that. Because the moment there's a successful Ukraine next door, where it's people first, the Russians themselves will see this and will start to say, why have we not got this? You can read my papers on these subjects. I've been published in America and on this subject of change in Ukraine in the military and Central and Eastern Europe effectively. No, I was published about 3 years ago on a paper would do all these people good to read. Even though it's based on the military, it is of course fundamentally based upon national stereotypes or types, and therefore it's applicable to anybody who's dealing with any government organisation, because it's exactly the same in the culture ministry or in the agriculture ministry as it is in the defence ministry.
Just a little bit about NATO. I know that you have a tie to Latvia, and Latvia kind of eased into NATO in 2004. What did Latvia have in 2004 that Ukraine still doesn't have?
Honesty. First, second, third, and fourth. First of all, when I was in Latvia, I went there 2002 till 2005. One of the things was to clear out all the former Soviets out of the security services. So there was a cleaning and a recognition that some people in the system across the whole security system must never be allowed to actually either get promoted further or to go anywhere further. That didn't actually work, but in the main, it was the honesty of opening up the system, the main politicians and officials actually dealing with NATO on a one-to-one basis and exposing the problems and asking for help, which then NATO provided, and myself and the American Defense Attaché worked extremely hard. Now that honesty is totally missing from Ukraine. On the contrary, it's the reverse. They cover everything up. NATO truth, they hide the truth.
Is this like a cultural thing, Glenn? Because you must run into this too, because I'll have a critical discussion about what's going on here. And inevitably someone says to me, what about your country? Or what gives you the right?
Yeah. It is cultural. It is cultural and it's deeply ingrained. I mean, you've got to remember that, that if you have a system where honesty is actually punished, and that system goes for 70 years, then you're not going to suddenly change. And of course, you've still got people who are in authority and who are still in like teaching positions in places who are of that breed. And their systems are broken. You can't tell anybody they're broken because you'll get punished. If you've only got 4 people and you need 6, you can't tell someone. They'll say you've got to make do with 4. Well, you can't. If you've got 6 vehicles and you've only got 4 in your troop, you can't drive 6 vehicles. If those 4 people, have not had driver training on the specific vehicle, you can't drive them anyway because you haven't had the training. If you haven't had the training on the weapon system, you can't take it on exercise and use it. What do? 3 of you take the 3 weapon systems out into the field and then you sit there. Now, this is a truth given to me by a young officer this year. And he's, and he can't tell anybody. Even he talks to his boss and his boss says, well, what are we going to do? He can't tell anybody because they'll all get in trouble. So truth is the first casualty of this cultural problem, and it runs deep.
This Ukrainian far right.
Okay, I mean, the far right thing is, do not forget that a large amount of this is Russian propaganda. Not all, but a large amount of it is Russian propaganda. One of the reasons is that the most nationalist organisation is Azov. And they're probably the best infantry battalion in the services as well. And so it is in Russia's interest to get Azov disbanded. And that's the last thing that the country needs. Because if you actually need people, your Praetorian Guard who are actually going to go in somewhere and fight and die, it's Azov.
Could you explain that to me though quickly? Because is Azov like a National Guard or are they active duty?
National Guard, but it's been trained by a lot of people from outside who've been to war many times. So both Ukrainians who were in Afghanistan before, Israelis who are Israeli Ukrainians or just Israelis who've come back, Americans as well. So they've had a lot because nobody has interfered with their training and their education and their development. They've actually developed properly in a Western style. So they are a quality battalion. They don't like putting them on the front line because they do their job properly, which is you don't sit in the trench, you do aggressive patrolling. And you go out and look for the enemy, which is what people are paid, which is what you're supposed to do in defence. Is there a right-wing element in this organisation? The answer is yes, of course there is. Because there is a degree of right-wing element in every country that has serious forces whose job is to just go and kill, and that is everywhere. That's in USA. It's in Britain. Parachute regiment always has problems with these things. You have to learn to get rid of them. But in wartime, you don't get rid of them, do you? Because you actually need them. This is not about nice boys. It's actually, there are times when you've actually got to go and do the business. Then you have to overlook what someone, what tattoos they've got and everything else. That is a harsh fact of life. if you're going to do jobs where you've got to save life as well as killing life, then you remove those people. So if you're going to Afghanistan or you're going to Iraq, then your forces have to be balanced, and you can't afford to have anybody in that organisation who may kill for the sake of killing. You just don't want them. So there's this fine balance all the time.
This is what you need in war, Glenn, but this war has been going on for 7 years. So
Yeah,
as long as it's...
It has. And if you actually look at the, and you look at the right-wing bit, I mean, how does the right-wing bit actually show itself? People putting things on walls, people, someone said, I saw them making Nazi salutes. Well, go back 3 or 4 years and a member of the British royal family was on television for wearing incorrect clothing.
How does nationalism show itself here? Because
this is not race. This is just being, there's a degree of being Ukrainian and being passionately Ukrainian to the point that you will die for Ukraine. That you don't accept you don't accept other people giving up your country and your land. Well, I mean, that's what we fought for in the Second World War, isn't it? We actually fought for our countries, and we fought for the survival of our countries. So, you have to remember that there are a lot of people who do not want Ukrainians to do that. And therefore, the counter-propaganda against Ukrainians that are Ukrainian is strong. Look, in Russia, you only show a Ukrainian flag and you're off to prison as fast as you can, fast as you can move. And their publicity is very, very strong. And, it's up to government, it's up to the military, it's up to the Ministry of Interior to double check that they've not got people that are so far right-wing that they are trying to bring in a country that nobody would like. I would just say, is there a problem? There is a problem with right-wingers in military in every country in the world. It has to be managed. It has to be managed. But has it shown itself in any vicious way anywhere? And the answer is no, it hasn't.
Yeah.
Ukraine is primarily a soft, liberal, Christian country. And the majority of people are like that. Actually too soft at the moment in many ways. So, the right-wing bit is something, but Russia is suggesting everybody's Nazi. The only Nazi country at the moment is Russia, which is why they're suggesting it to everybody else. The only person who acts like